Hey guys, I'm here to give you the solution to Workout Wednesday week 34 of 2019, brought to us by Jeffrey Schaefer. I want to look at the solution really quick before I get started, just so we know what we're on the hunt for. So, Jeff has served up a challenge where we are supposed to show the top N. Right now, he's got it to 15 manufacturers by region using a single worksheet. The numbers in here are the quantity. So, when you look at this other, there's 1,529 is the quantity for other and for Xerox and so on. And you can notice as I interact with it, we've already got some things happening. So if I hover over Xerox, you're going to see that the number 2 shows up in parentheses to show the rank. I think this makes the most sense when you start going down to like GBC here. If you hover on this, you're going to see that it shows the rank for each of the individual regions so that you can start comparing it across. And Jeff has challenged us to make this in a single worksheet. And he's also set it up so that you can exclude other from the view and still show the top 15, or you can adjust this. I'll go ahead and make it 10 and see what happens. And presumably we could make it 25 even and start getting a larger bar chart going on where we've got 25 of the top manufacturers per region. So let's go ahead and get started. So I've got a new Tableau workbook open connected to our sample superstore data set. So where I would typically start is I'm going to bring on this group manufacturer because we know that is what Jeff is using for the bar chart for the labels and the quantity. And we can bring on the quantity as well. And we'll start to see what we get built. I'm going to just sort it in descending order by the quantity. And I'm going to add on the region to the top. Now, this is sort of the beginning of what we want our view to look like, but it's slightly different in the fact that we've got the same label, the same manufacturer label repeated for every region. So this is really telling me that other is the top manufacturer for all of the regions combined, the way it's sorted. The sort is happening, I'll say, independent of the region that's separated on there. And more specifically, we're locked into what those headers are, those row headers are, to determine the order. So the first thing that I would do when I see something like this is I'm going to use a table calculation, because what we want to do is rank or count or index each of these manufacturers within each of the independent regions. So the way I would get started is I would use index. You could also use rank unique or rank. You want to use rank unique probably because that's going to make sure you have one number per each value. I like to use index because index is just going to count things and we can specify how we want it to count. So I'm going to create a ad hoc table calculation index. It's going to look funny because it's continuous. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to discrete so we can see what's happening. So now across my whole viz, it's indexing the manufacturers. It's starting at 1 and it's going all the way down. Let me scroll down a little bit here, all the way down to 183. That's our number of rows. But what we really want is we want the manufacturer to be on the bars, to be the labels, and not be locked into them being over here on the rows. So first I'm going to take manufacturer and I'm just going to drag it on to label instead so we can start seeing some more goodness of what's happening. So here, everything has an index of 1, but you can see I've got individual marks for every region for each of my manufacturers. So the next step that I would do here is I'm actually just going to edit my table calculation, and I'm just going to specify how it's going to be addressing the data in the view. So right now it's on table down, and it's actually just giving everything an index of 1. So I'm just going to specify this further. I'm going to tick my region and my manufacturer, and I'm going to drag region on top of manufacturer. This is important because if I have region above manufacturer in this list, when I select restart, I can restart it every region. So now we're starting to get something a little bit more legitimate. You can see that within each region, my bars are now out of sort order, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But we've got a mark for each individual column of region. And you can see if I look at maybe number 8 here, I've got 2 different labels. So in the East, it's Advantus, and in Central, it's Alliance, which means I'm on the right track. So this is where I'm going to set the sort. I'm going to customize it. We know it is quantity in descending order, so the sum of the quantity in descending order. And I may actually go here and drag this so we can actually see the labels a little bit further. Let me get more of them to show. And so we're starting to get exactly what Jeff had going on. I've got, and let me show this other over here. I've got a bar chart for every region. It's restarting. They're sorted in descending order by the sum of the quantity. And this is getting me somewhere pretty good, pretty fast. So this is kind of the first step that I would take. Again, you could use rank unique if you wanted to. In that world, you're just going to define the measure that you want to sort by and the way you sort it. I like to use index. I think it's really fast and easy, so your preference. Okay. So the next thing I'd probably start working on is the labels here on the left. So two things we notice are happening is one, it's got the manufacturer's name, and then the other is if when you hover over it, it's got that number, the index, the rank shown across on the hover. So first I'm going to resolve for just getting the manufacturer name showing. I think there's a couple ways that you could do this as well. I would tend to pick something like a Gantt bar. So I'm going to make another ad hoc measure. I'm just going to call it minimum of 0. And I'm going to change this to a Gantt bar. And now you can see what's happening. I've got my quantity, and then I've got another set, another bar chart or Gantt bar. It's always at 0, and it's got the manufacturer name on there. I'm going to go ahead and make this a dual axis. Things are going to start getting weird here, and that's okay. I'm going to synchronize first. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on quantity. I'm going to change this back to a bar chart, and I'm going to click on the minimum, and I'm going to keep it as the Gantt bar. So we'll start there. So the next thing I'd want to do is I'm going to set this label. All I'm going to do on my Gantt bar is I'm going to set the label to the left-hand side, and I think it's bigger in Jeff's final solution, so I'm going to make it 12, and I'll make it a little bit easier for you to see as well. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to all, and I'm going to hold down my control key, and I'm just going to drag region onto color. He had it on color in his final solution. He was using the Neural Stone color palette, so I'm just going to drag region onto color. Let's find our Neural Stones. We had purple, then we had the green, then the blue, and then this guy. Probably was faster if I just clicked assign. Okay. So we're getting closer now. The next things that I would do just to start quickly getting the right solution is on my quantity bar chart, I've got the manufacturer shown, but we really want to show the quantity. So I'm just going to drag that onto label instead. Let's drag it this way. And I'm actually going to just erase manufacturer from here. You could also just put manufacturer on detail. It's kind of your call on how you want it to do that. Let's make this 12 as well so it matches in terms of size. I'm going to match the mark color. And then on the min 0, the color is already set. So the only thing I need to do to get the label to match is I'm going to match the mark color as well. Okay, so we're getting really close. The only other thing I would do is I'm going to unshow the header here. We can unshow the header at the bottom when we get ready, when we feel comfortable, but we're getting really close to what Jeff had originally. The other kind of formatting things we could do quickly are we could turn off the grid lines for the entire workbook because they're not needed. And because we're really only going to work with one sheet, we can come in and we can specify what our 0 lines look like. Jeff's were just like a solid dark line. If you look at the solution. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to make my 0 lines a solid darker line to get started. Okay. So now that we've done that, the next thing that I would do is actually make sure that set up my TopIn. So for me, I would create a parameter, and we'll just call this TopIn manufacturers. And let's make it an integer. And we'll set it to 15 just so we can check and see if we can match what Jeff has. So that, and let me actually show this. Here's our TopIn manufacturers. It's set to 15. Of course, after you make the parameter control, you have to use it in a calculated field. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to control, drag, and add that index and say that it must be less than or equal to that TopIn. And I'm going to call this true false TopIn filter. So this is a simple calculated field. If the index is less than or equal to the TopIn manufacturer number that we identify, we would like to limit the view to that, and I'm going to set this to true. Now, when I do this, nothing happens, and this is a good lesson that table calculations are pretty specific. They're pretty dependent on how you set them. So this is a good idea for me that I need to make sure that my table calculation is set correctly. If I go in here, it's not. It's just set to that table down. So we'll do the same thing. I'll set it to region, manufacturer, restart it every region. And then if I go in and I edit my filter now, you'll see I have true and false. So we'll just set it to true. Let me double check and make sure that I set my sort on this for our quantity so it doesn't look so crazy. And there we go. And let's go ahead and set it one more time. And this time, hopefully, we'll see that we've got the top 15 for each one. I would pull up Jeff's at this time and just check. So if I've got the top 15 here, just do a visual check. I've got other showing. I've got other Xerox Avery, and it goes all the way down, and then it repeats. I'd look across the different regions. It looks like our 15th one, Acme and Advantus, is pretty good. Just some visual checks to know that things are working correctly. So that's looking good. The other thing that would be a quick victory, I think, is actually other. It's is funnily enough other. So I would create a calculated field to deal with that. So what I would actually do is do something like, let's make a parameter first. So let's make a parameter. Let's say, what did he have it called? Include other. Include other. And we'll make it a Boolean. And true will set to yes as an alias, and false will set to no. And then, of course, we're going to use this in a calculated field. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to create a calculated field and call this true, false, include other. And then I'm just going to say if include other, then true, else manufacturer not equal to other. And so what this is going to do is when the parameter is set to true, then it's going to be true. So if the parameter set to true or yes, then it's always going to be true. It's always going to look for and be true. Otherwise, it's going to go in and it's going to look at the manufacturers and make sure that the manufacturer is not equal to other. So let's make sure that that works. Let me add this on, and I'm going to set this to true as well. And nothing's changed, and that's fine because my parameter for other is over here and it's set to yes. So let me go ahead and set it to no and see what happens. So this is great. If I have it set to yes, other is included. We have 15 rows, but if it's set to no, it's not included and we still have 15 rows. Pro tip as to why this is working. If you think about the Tableau order of operations, table calculations come almost dead last. There's only one or two things after that. It's reference lines or trend lines. So the fact that we've got a nice dimension filter, just a basic filter before the table calculation, means that we don't really have to worry about how the table calculation is going to address the data in the view and how it's going to filter, because it's going to come after our basic sort of dimensional filter here. So that's awesome. That's perfect. So at this point, I was like, oh, okay, we've got it like 90% of the way there. We can do some more formatting. And so then it's time to do this last step, which is the hover here, to make sure that when you hover, it only shows that one particular manufacturer, which makes sense if you go to maybe GBC like we were doing before. But the other thing that was kind of interesting is that it's showing the rank or the number, the index associated with that. So I was thinking that the best way to do this might actually be a set action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a set. I'm going to right click and I'm just going to create a set. We're going to call this the highlight manufacturer. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take the region out because the only thing we care about is the manufacturer itself. And right now, because I'm just building the set, it doesn't matter what's in it. We're going to change it immediately, and this will be a great way to make sure that it's working to start off with. So I've got my manufacturer set to Xerox. And then what I want to do is a couple things. So the first one is I'm actually going to create a calculated field, and I'm going to call this the manufacturer label. And I'm going to say that if the highlight manufacturer, so sets are either true or false. So if this is true, then I want it to say I want to have the manufacturer plus, this is fun, right? This is all in quotes. We want the number. So we have a parentheses and then a number and then a space and then more parentheses and then plus. We want the string of the index, and I guarantee you you're going to have to reassign what this is. And then we want the other closed parenthesis here. So if this is true, then we want it to say that, else we want it to be the manufacturer. And this is going to throw an error, and the error makes sense. It's going to tell us that you can't mix aggregated and non-aggregated functions inside of a calculated field, and that's totally valid because index is itself an aggregated function. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to set each of these to max. You could use the attribute function here. Since we are going to have manufacturer on detail at the end, I'm just going to use max. That'll be a little bit faster. And all I'm really telling Tableau at this point is, if this is such a true, then show me the manufacturer plus this extra little stuff, this number, the index expressed as a string so we can have it as a label. Otherwise, just show me the manufacturer. And what will happen is when we set up a set action, we will be putting those manufacturers or a manufacturer specifically into the set to make sure that that works. So I'm going to click on my min of 0, and I'm going to actually take my manufacturer label, and I'm first going to put it here, and I'm actually going to put it on label there, and I'm going to take my manufacturer and put it on detail. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that my table calculation is correct on this one, because we noticed that it wasn't saving. Thank you, Tableau. And we will set this up one more time. This is where maybe rank is going to save you a little bit of time, but again, it's just a preference in terms of the way you want to take this. So we're just setting it up exactly the same way. Okay, and then you'll notice that right now in our set, Xerox is in our set. So by default, that is set to 1, which is awesome. So now we want to set up that action, and this is where I'm going to add a set action. So we're going to change the set values. I'm going to call this the rank highlight. And I'm going to set this to hover. I want it to run on single select only so it doesn't overwhelm what's being hovered, so we don't have like an array of manufacturers put into the set. We just want that one value. The target set is coming from our sample superstore, and we want it to be the highlight manufacturer. If it's cleared, we want to remove everything from the set. So we don't want anything to be in there, because if nothing's hovered on, we want everything to be false. We just want the normal manufacturer highlight. So we'll do that, and I'm going to add on just the basic highlight as well. Just the hover highlight here. I get really specific, and I'm only going to highlight the manufacturer. So this is just saying when I hover over Xerox as an example, highlight every bar that says Xerox. Okay, so let's see this in action. So right now, if I hover over Xerox, you're going to see that when I hover over Xerox, that we show the number 1 in parentheses for each of them. Let's go down to GBC, see what happens. So GBC is highlighted. When I hover over it, I've got the number 3 in parentheses, and I've got them highlighted on every bar chart. So it looks like we're pretty close. The only thing I'm noticing from sort of a precision perspective is that there's not a space here, I don't think. I'm going to take that off. That should be okay. Shouldn't hurt anything. So there's Wilson Jones. That's kind of nice. We can see it's 11, 10, 11, and 11. Okay. So final steps here, wrapping it all up. I think the only other things that Jeffrey's done here is he's formatted these a couple different ways. I think that this is maybe like 16, and then this isn't showing, which is nice. And then he's got the tooltips off, which is a lifesaver. So we'll just come in and we'll just turn them off. I like to erase this before I turn it off. Probably overkill, but bad habit. And then this isn't showing either, so we will turn that off. And then there aren't any borders as well. So we'll take that off, and we'll take this off as well. The last steps to finish this up are just to have this title added on here. And let's see if I can actually copy and paste this in, because that might be faster. So let me go in and let's see if we can't do that. Perfect. I'm going to erase this line because I'm going to use it at the bottom whenever I have my caption. And we'll put that on there. The only kind of fun thing, and I would do this, I would copy and paste this in. This is centered. This looks like it's centered as well. That's totally fine. If it's, I think it might actually be left justify. No, it's centered. If you needed to left justify, you could. And then I would do right click and add on the caption. And then I've saved this off on the side, but I would just come in and I'm going to paste in our little caption here for our footer. And then the only other thing that happens is that we don't have our color legend. And so now let's just take a look and let's see if this is working. We've got our one sheet. Let's pick a different number. Let's go to maybe 25 again, like we did with Jeff's example here. Let's see here. If I click on Maxwell or I hover on Maxwell, it looks like that is working. We should check Jeff's because I'm not seeing it in the East region. Let's go look. This is set to 25. Let's find Maxwell. That looks good. I'm not seeing it in the East region. And then let's make sure our yes and no is working. Oh yes, I see one more thing that I've forgotten to do, which is when I did my copy and paste from Jeff's, it did not take into consideration the number in here. So all I need to do is go in and change my TopIn so that it's not static. It's now responsive to my parameter. So now that looks a little bit better. When I've got top 20, it's got our top 20. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hide that as well. And that's it. With a few simple clicks, we have recreated Jeff's Workout Wednesday, where we have got a single worksheet showing the TopIn, and we've got an include or exclude other from there. And we've got a really nice set action that lets us see the label for the individual ranks as we hover and highlight. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful.